I'm going to be talking about the evaluation and quality assurance in the ENRICH project. And what I'd like to say, first of all, is that, working on this aspect of the major aspects of the project feels like going behind the curtain a little bit. And even though you're very active, you're monitoring the process. And even though the Norwegian team with collaborating with HOU, we were so actively engaged in everything else, but definitely worked behind the curtain. And I will explain what I mean by that in a minute, because it felt as if there were two lives in this project, where everything was happening and shared with major stakeholders, such as teachers and students, but quite a lot that the eye could not see, the eyes of the outsiders. And so far, just a brief kind of overview of what we've been talking about this afternoon is that we actually looked at various intellectual outputs. And this is a little bit of jargon that we've been using in the project so far. But probably you already can see the different bubbles here that comprise the basic pillars of ENRICH. And so far, there have been some very interesting presentations on needs analysis, the professional course, and just a minute ago, Lily was talking about the ENRICH handbook. However, two more major aspects of the ENRICH project, the evaluation quality assurance, and the ENRICH dissemination will be presented this afternoon. But I'd like to focus on evaluation and quality assurance. And it feels as if not only going behind the curtains, but it feels as if anyone working on aspects of a project that concerns evaluation and quality assurance, it's as if you're a little bit behind the camera, because you need to, in a way, record what's happening in front of the camera, and those who are behind the camera are just moving behind and front of the camera at the same time. But I'd like to share a little bit of what evaluation and quality assurance is, generally speaking, before looking at the evaluation quality assurance of ENRICH. Any project, and it seems to have been a tradition so far, especially in Erasmus Plus projects, to safeguard the quality of their projects, need to look at the quality of the projects through engaging in more coordinated and systematic efforts of making sure that, yes, quality is achieved. And therefore, the goal of any evaluation quality assurance of any project is to provide the project consortium with standards, criteria, procedures, and mechanisms which will assure that the project is delivered in a consistent and high quality way. The project results, especially what we refer to as deliverables, such as the handbook and the online course in our case. And of course, the activities are in compliance with the project objectives. They comply also with national legislation. Very often we would refer to that as the national agent, the EACEA, which stands for the European Education and Culture Executive Agency, requirements for project implementation. They meet the needs and expectations of target groups, and of course, they're of high quality. Specific objectives of any evaluation quality assurance are, of course, to clarify the standards and requirements for project processes, specify the mechanisms and procedures for monitoring and evaluating project processes, deliverables, and activities, and enable continuous improvement of the project implementation. What about ENRICH? How did we safeguard evaluation quality assurance of ENRICH? First, the purposes were set. That is, the purpose of quality and assurance in ENRICH was to monitor the progress towards the goals, which had been set at the beginning of the project. Another purpose was to examine the effectiveness of the project activities, to assess the impact of the ENRICH professional development infrastructure, and generate recommendations for future researchers. To be able to do this, specific sets of criteria, indicators, and special evaluation instruments were created. And all of this, of course, went into reports. And reports were internally made as well as submitted to national agent, in this case, the Greek national agent. The criteria and indicators for ENRICH, what were they? They were basically based on the findings of the needs analysis surveys. And by now you have all a clear idea of what the needs analysis were. And Lucilla shared quite a lot of interesting finding as well. Also, the criteria and indicators of the quality assurance of the project were based on a thorough literature review on a lot of issues of ENRICH. For example, a literature review of multilingualism, ELF, competencies the teachers need to develop to be able to improve teaching and learning, such as translanguaging and CLIL. And this actually went into an extensive report, a thorough literature review on blended learning, face-to-face, for example, and digital content, similarities and differences, advantages and disadvantages, and quite a lot of literature review on effective teacher education. Also, criteria and indicators were based on the idiosyncrasies of each local context and with, of course, the particular requirements of each end user of the project's main activities, and of course, a series of facts, figures, and other kinds of products referred to very often as tangible and intangible related to the impact of the project. And all of these were, of course, went into an extensive report that I'm not going to share with you today because it's quite extensive. What I'd like to say is that the evaluation and quality assurance report has been running ever since the project started. It's one of the main intellectual outputs that have been running throughout the life of the project, along with the dissemination, for example, and probably they will continue after the life of the project when the final reports are submitted. Of course, I have to say that it was not just a collaboration between two universities, Oslo Met and the Hellenic Open University, but all partners contributed in putting together, and actually, as I said, supporting the quality of the project. How did we do this in practice? A lot of questionnaires with closed and open-ended items were actually asked, were to be filled in by the participants and the partners of the various activities of ENRICH. We did interviews and focus groups with participants. We wanted to do observations, but because of COVID-19 and other aspects, that was not possible. In most of the countries, a lot of facts and figures related to project's website, for example, numbers of participants and characteristics were recorded, numbers of meetings with the social and policy makers and other stakeholders were again reported, media coverage and visibility in the social media and attractiveness of the website and other details are now recorded in the report that we have put together, links with existing networks and transnational partners, for example, through LinkedIn and ResearchGate are already in place, and feedback from end users and stakeholders, such as, for example, policymakers through questionnaires and personal communication. So these are some of the instruments that have been used and some of the information that has been collected throughout the years of the project. And these are just a few screenshots of some of the very many questionnaires that we have sent out to partners and participants. Still quite a few of these are active. So for example, the one at the bottom right, titled Follow-up Elf-Aware Pedagogy in the Era of COVID-19 a year later, is an active questionnaire still eliciting responses from CBT participants, for example, that is really very useful in terms of reporting for us. Evaluation was built everywhere at the end of activities, before activities. Here you see an example of the course evaluation that the CBT, that is the course participants, engaged with at the end of the piloting of the CBT course. All of this, of course, is very well kept in our own repository on Dropbox, where we keep all the files and folders and deliverables, and this is just an example of what has gone there. Collaborations. Without collaborations, quality is not possible. Therefore, we established a system and a structure and practice where frequent and effective communications between all participants were taking place through, of course, questionnaires, through interviews, through exchanges with emails. All different kinds of media were used. We established mutually agreed contact process for conflict resolutions. There was foresight on potential project risks and events, and pretty much the case with COVID-19 that some of what we planned originally had to move a little bit later, for example, but that was part of the quality assurance report. Regulation of the individual project activities in terms of timelines, milestones, and outcomes. Of course, inspection and evaluation of each participant involved in the project also took part, and frequent contact with the national agent was another way of establishing quality in the project. And of course, loads of reporting in the form of technical reports that were sent to the national agent. This is what the report looks like on the outside. This is the cover of the report. It's almost 100 pages already. All of this is reported there, and you can see at the contents page on the right-hand side, which it would be mind-blowing to even start sharing with you. But just to let you know that what the content of that report is, where basically everything is reported in terms of quality, is definitely a description of the coordination of the evaluation and quality activities, description of the coordination, evaluation, and quality assurance methodology, how various activities were monitored, and of course, monitoring and evaluating the impact of the project activities. The report is divided into many different parts, all the way from alignment to the original project timeline, how the different project roles and responsibilities have been executed, how the effectiveness of the project meetings went, all the way to how the quality of the needs analysis, the learning environment activities and the environment itself, the course activities, how the impact of the ENRICH activities actually took place, and of course the impact of the multiplier events that took place as part of the dissemination plan of the project that will be detailed later on by Yasmin. So I'm going to bring this to an end by saying that quality assurance is an essential and necessary part of every project, especially because it supports and it makes sure that quality is in place, especially with Erasmus Plus projects. But we think that we've done a very good job with the ENRICH project. And of course, a little bit more work needs to be done before we bring things to closure. We learned a lot of lessons, and now we feel a lot more experienced and knowledgeable on how to conduct quality assurance in our projects. But of course, we can advise others if you're interested in how we manage to achieve quality levels in our project. So thank you for that.